Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to discuss Persepolis Rising. I think that's the correct pronunciation. So we are here. We have the band back together. It's been a little over a month, but it's nice to see all of you again. Layla, will you kick us off with introductions, please?
Yes, I'm Layla Goshi. I'm an English professor in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm editing a online journal called Ballady Magazine.
Very nice. Right, my name's Chris Moen. I'm a sometimes YouTuber, sometimes appearing on Steve's channel, and sometimes on Twitter and PageTune forums and wherever else you can find. Usually in the comments of other people's videos as well. That's probably a good place to find me. So,
And Robin?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Robin. I have a YouTube channel called Bookend and Biscuits where I talk about sci-fi and crime mostly. But yeah.
Nice. Great to see all of you again. It's great to continue our read.
It's very exciting.
I can't wait for this one.
Yeah. I think it's going to be. I think I saw your comment on your reading wrap up or your monthly or your weekly wrap up or something, and I was like, yeah, I feel it's going to be a very interesting discussion on this book. So.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll be getting into. We'll just go full spoilers, and I think we may spoil the TV show for some people because I think it's something in a way, just because not specifically, but just the way it ended. And the reason I say that is because I always wondered why they ended it the way they did, like where they ended it.
Yep.
Now I know why.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So, Robin, you want to kick us off, and what'd you think?
Oh, God, okay. Yeah, being an absolutely massive fan of this series, this was a hard one for me because I really didn't like the beginning of it. I didn't like the time skip. I just didn't enjoy it. I really didn't enjoy it. I kind of felt like it's a bunch of grandmas and grandpas riding around a ship, which seems really stupid. But saying that, at this point in the series, because of the familiarity of the characters and the story and the world, I still liked it because it was like cozy to me because you know them. So I liked it because of that side of things, but I didn't like a lot of it on the actual like story side of it, which is a weird thing for me to be because as I said, I love the characters, I love the people, I love the style of writing, but it felt like a kind of hug, but least favorite in terms of like actual content, I think. So yeah, that was where I stood.
What about you, Layla?
I agree. I didn't like the time skip. I did not like the idea that Holden and Naomi would just go retire somewhere. I mean, and maybe that was part of the plot, but I could see them being, end up being stationed somewhere because somebody sent them there. But it just was out of character, uh, in my opinion, that they would just suddenly, after all they've probably been through, just say, "Oh, we're going to go, retire and sit on the front porch." It just did not seem right. But I did like some of the new things. I did like the new terror, which was the giant proto-molecule ship. I thought that was great. I thought they had some uh, good, innovative ideas in terms of that. So.
And Chris, what do you think?
This book made me very angry. None of the science makes any sense, really. Especially every time everybody does something in one of the chapters, and you're like, "But you're 70." and 70, I've been taking cancer meds for 40 years. Like, I don't know. I'll tell you, I do agree actually with everything that Rob and Lila said, because you're so invested in the characters. At a certain point, you're like, okay, if I put all of the annoyances aside, I still do like these characters. I still do like the world in general, and I quite like where the story went, although it still very much felt like book one of a new kind of arc, very much so in terms of all that. But yeah, oh my god, some of the science stuff just makes me my head explode. Some thematically good stuff though.
I love seeing Eva Sorella again. I'll never complain. But when she showed up, I'm like, "You're still alive?
What?
Like, you're
Yeah.
still kicking? You still have your faculty? Like, you're still functional? Like, after all you've been through? I don't know."
She was a granny at the end of the last book.
Yeah, well, she's a great grandmother now, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah, she has some years on her, but yeah, something that bothers me with, I guess you could say space opera, is that there's this whole universe of people, and we focus on like a select 10. Like it's the
Right.
same 10 people. It's like let's bring new people in. Let's mix things up a little bit. Like we'll keep the core, but bring in some new people that aren't like red shirts who are going to be killed. You know.
Right.
Like, one of my biggest pet peeves about the start of the book was it was as if Bobby had just come on. It was like the end of book 6, was it? And she just come onto the crew. But 30 years have passed when they've been together as a crew. And it's almost like they still treat her as the new kid in town. Like, what? They should be well embedded, a bit like Clarissa, a bit like everybody that's in this ship now they'll be sick of looking at each other, surely. You know, power dynamics be damned, or otherwise with Holden and Naomi and all that. But they still kind of, it's like, see my whole through the book, her and Amos have never talked in 30 years, even though they've, anyway, yeah.
No, that is it. Well, my question was, did I understand correctly that Clarissa was the captain as the ship opens, or no?
I think
No,
so. I
still
think it is Holden.
Or there's something where Holden says, this is her ship, maybe in terms of being, of working with Amos. Then, okay, I wasn't quite clear what was happening with that, but that makes more sense. Because I would have thought, why not Bobby? But, and then my other kind of outstanding question about the idea of Holden and Naomi moving to Luna or Titan, I'm guessing, well, we know the gravity is less. And so, because I thought one of Naomi's issues was to not live on a surface. She was a belter, so she never wanted to live on a planetary surface, although that's not, Lunar Titan. So I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me that was where she would say she wanted to retire. Unless some kind of big change that we could read about had occurred, so that you would say, okay, well, now that makes sense.
Yeah, they kind of made it sound like, okay, this was them at the end of their tether, like he was just done with it all, blah, blah, blah. But I think because where you're just like snap introduced, you didn't see like any build up to that. So you kind of felt like they were just like, okay, we're now done. And it was just like, really? Because of that one thing? Okay. There wasn't any like backgrounds to why they would end up retiring, I guess. So yeah, it was a bit of a, all right, okay, fair enough. So yeah, very strange.
I liked how they set up Dorothy to be this like big bad who's waited like 30 years to to hatch his plan, and they're like, he's not Marco, he's way more dangerous. It's like Marco killed billions of people. I mean, he was a pretty bad guy. I say he's pretty effective at being a bad guy. It's like, well, he was nothing compared to Dorothy. It's like, okay, well, what is Dorothy gonna do? Like,
right?
What is he gonna do to top that?
Okay. I'm just going to start reaming some of these stuff off. Right. Okay. So how many people went to the Laconia system with Duarte? Like, approximately, would you say?
I was thinking that. I was trying to times up the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, say 5,000. I mean, I don't think it was anywhere near 5,000, but let's say, for instance, it was 5,000. And they've built all these big, massive ships. And I know there was existing shipyards, etc. there. And they've come back with enough crew to still have that Laconia, like, well-habited. The numbers just don't make any sense. And there's billions in Earth and Mars and stuff, like, billions.
Yeah. And they've also been killing off their population, apparently quite rapidly as well. So, yeah, when you have the opening of the book and the pens and how they're treating people and using the precise experiments. Like, so they're not this preserving the amount of people that they have either. So yeah, the numbers to me didn't make any sense.
But
Yeah.
I was like, soon they'll just run out of people. You just have to wait.
if we kill 10 people here, there are really big problems. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, the numbers didn't make much sense there, did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good,
But then I guess maybe.
Aaron
Yeah.
says hello, just catching up. Agree, you have to suspend your belief about some of the passage of time stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, Robin, go ahead.
To be honest, I was for a while. I was like, I was really. I know. Again, I'm glad they explained it at the end about the fact that there was that kind of, as you said, the shipyard. Because again, I was just like, I don't understand. It's been 30 years. Even if they just focused on, getting, there was no way they could have evolved all that stuff in the time. So I'm glad they kind of gave a little bit of explanation about the fact that they had a whole ship there and so on and so forth. Because I was just like, again, it wouldn't have been able to cycle that fast and so differently from Mars and Earth with even if they had like some technology. It seemed like a bit of a massive different jump in tech, which seemed a bit unbelievable with such a not short but that kind of timeline they were saying.
Tech's one thing, but manpower's completely a separate thing. Like pure manpower that should have been like if they 223 ships, isn't that all that the people could amass? Was I think that's the number, that they can amass in all that time. I guess this one, I don't know, whatever. But these ships are hulking monstrosities. Even like the Gathering Storm, wasn't it? They went on to. They were talking about going up 8 decks of ship. You know, hundreds of people would be needed to man that, like hundreds, and that's one of the small ships. I'm sorry.
I can just imagine you like you got your book and then you're like times 5 and 8 and 3.
Spot the maths teacher. Oh my god.
You know, I did wonder if in building, because they described the ships as being self-healing, you know, so I wondered if there were like some program that once they set it off, you know, the whole thing would develop, but that wouldn't explain the interior structure that I assume that humans would have to build inside. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That is really bizarre. So, and it's, you know, there's such good books, and so it is disappointing. It made me feel like they did have some great ideas. Like I do think those ships are, I think those are great ideas, you know, and yeah, really scary to see this like hulking thing come through, but it just didn't seem well thought out in general.
Did it strike anybody else? And I see Erin's in the chat, and she might actually be able to pipe it in this. I don't know how big Star Trek fans we have in the panel here. So it was very like the Borg. The Laconia kind of thing was extremely like the Borg or the Next Generation in terms of like so far beyond them, you know, in terms of technology, etc., that it almost felt futile. Sorry for using that word, but futile to even fight them, which is kind of what happened, you know, by the time they came through. But it was very much reminiscent of that whole era of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, etc.
I agree. What ran through my mind was the opening of Star Wars. The what is it? Episode 4.
4, yeah.
Yeah, where you know the ship just keeps coming and coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Borg too is just a classic, and they could have been playing off of that.
Yeah.
With the age thing, to be fair to Erin's comment, they did say that they were taking some. I'm sure I heard, because I listened to this, as we said earlier, I listened to this for the first time on audiobook, and I'm sure I heard them discuss something about the fact that they took regenerative drugs now. There was a line or a passage in there somewhere where Holden's just like, even with the with the drugs they're taking, like they were still feeling old. So I think there was a line to kind of maybe put into context that actually they're not as old as you would expect normal people, but usual people to be at that age. So, but yeah, especially when they were sent off to do this, like he was still being sent around to be a diplomat and be and they were like talking about bringing either Bobby or Amos down, and I'm like, they're old. Like, why would you not just send a whole new ship with young Marines on it? Like, what's the point?
Yeah. Especially the amount of physical, like, really, I'd say there's more graphic physical encounters here in this book than there have been in any of the other books, especially between Bobby and Amos, the fights that are between them. And again, every time one of those fights films finished, I was like, you're 70? Broken tailbones, arms, like, I know the healed and do all. I was like,
what are you doing? Stop it.
Stop fighting. I can't walk up the stairs without getting tired at 40.
Now I feel like we're being ageist a little bit.
Aaron mentions, yeah, it could be Borg inspired. Biological mixed with tech is a sci-fi trope, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So what did you guys think about, okay, as a theme, I guess, what did you guys think about the Laconians in general and how they actually were doing the invasion? Like how the stances they took, the way they were coming across, how they were presenting themselves? Because I thought that was very, very interesting. Like it was obviously hugely different to what we'd seen before and almost kind of like reasonable. In kind of that way, and how they were kind of putting themselves forward and saying, "You're killing these people. We don't have to." And I thought that was an interesting spin on it because it made them vaguely likable. I think, and we know why we don't like them because obviously no one likes invaders, but like they kind of give you this hint of this like horrific stuff that's happening on Laconia. But actually, all of the interactions throughout the book are very reasonable. They come across as nice guys. You know, we're just going to be your, I don't know, overlords, but we're not really going to expect much for you. You know, it's going to be like a very, you can just continue doing your own thing as long as you're part of this. Like they weren't aggressive or anything else. I didn't know what you guys thought of that kind of diplomacy, I guess.
You know, I mean, that reminded me of a couple of things. One, just in general, you know, you hear that people just want stability in the end, and if a threat comes along, you know, the first thing people think of is, you know, what's going to happen to me and my stuff, you know. So stability is something that might make a large part of the population say, you know, okay, let's wait and see how this goes. And I think the underlying fear would be, you know, what happens when they do just roll over and give up to them? What will they do next? And gosh, there was one other point I wanted to make on that because, it reminded me of Game of Thrones. Sorry, where you know the Targaryens came in and took over Westeros, but they didn't really change each kingdom's you know way of life, and so maybe that is a strategy in other books. I haven't really thought about it, but that's what it reminded me of.
I think Naomi even makes a comment when they first come over and their military comes over and they execute the people who are resisting, but they treat everyone else with respect. And I think Naomi even says something to the effect of, I kind of respect them for that, or it's kind of, it's nice, I guess, that they aren't just rolling over everyone. So they did try to make them reasonable, like as reasonable as invaders can be, I guess.
Yeah.
I think obviously rather than a lot, but I actually think this is quite a brilliant part of the book because I think they explore it from loads of different angles. The fact that the events in Freehold and how Drummer and the trade union, or whatever the union was called, TU is what I ended up calling it in my head every time I read it. They were basically doing exactly the same thing as the Laconians, which was very much, you know, doing this kind of martial law. You will abide by our rules or we'll just cut you off, which is essentially what the Laconians were doing when they were coming in, but they were kind of at odds with each other to say, oh, they're bad, but we're good, when effectively we're doing exactly the same thing, this idea of democracy, but without having input. And then culminated in, I'm going to have to just bite my tongue here a little bit, the great speech that Holden has with, or the conversation he has with Singh about, you know, when it's convenient that you can start history from a certain point of time and all of that kind of, like, that was really, really nice piece of writing and thought provoking. And I have to say, I really liked Holden in this book. There's
Mhm.
something really like the Naomi Holden relationship actually didn't bother me once at all in the whole thing, and I liked Holden as a character the whole way through. He was the most consistent, I think, with who he was in previous books and all of that kind of stuff. But yet that conversation between them, and even showing how Singh reflects on what Holden had said to him, kind of, it was very interesting, really interesting.
So after 30 years, you're now fine with their relationship.
Right. I'm a slow burn.
Finally accepted it.
When they're
But I
ready to
think
run
I
off in
don't.
the sunset.
Yeah. I don't know if that's maybe why they had to do the pen thing at the beginning, because otherwise they almost feel too reasonable. Like they're just like, well, actually, they're not that bad. Maybe they're bringing good things. You don't want to have a new master, but they're just not. They're quite good. So I don't know whether they put in the pen stuff to make it kind of like you kind of not like them because you don't know if they're going to introduce this and it's kind of creepy and you don't know when they're going to turn into that. Because I just thought they were like pretty damn reasonable people. I thought that was like, okay, weren't that bad. So
That's another. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I finished. It's all good.
Yeah, that's another more complex situation, similar to what Chris was talking about when Bobby realizes that she will be fighting Martians.
Yeah.
And I fully, I thought they were setting her up to actually take action in a certain way, and she didn't. But I did like just that they raised that issue of how complex things can be just when the tables turn in some way, and people start. She started questioning her loyalties a little bit, and I did think her story was interesting because here she's come in to take command, but then as soon as Holden walks in the room, Bobby's having to take a step back because of Holden's reputation. And I thought they did that well. And the battle, I kind of wanted to talk about the battle between her and Amos again because they really duked it out. And again, it was, well, I do think it made sense that they were doing it because Bobby was coming into their relationship was changing, the power dynamic was changing. And I guess they are both physical people. And so the only way they could resolve their difference or settle their differences was through, just a beat down. And I think it worked when I first read it. I was like, would they really do this after all this time? And so I think that was my sticking point again. It was the amount of time they had spent together.
Yeah.
And the first time a power dynamic shifts at all, it just totally changed. Yeah. So a little bit of admiration, a little bit of skepticism at the same time on that. We had two Steves for a minute.
I know. I saw two Steves there.
This is the singularity. Yeah, I'm telling you. Yeah.
Sorry, not sure what happened there.
That's good. But yeah, I thought the fight was, again, I agree with the fact that you'd think after that long would there really be issues with that kind of stuff, but you had the kind of, again, the duality of it. Was it a pecking order thing and then sorting it out, but also it was about Amos just dealing with his, excuse my language, but shit in general, like how he deals with stuff. That's how he deals with us. So it was almost like a therapy type S thing for him as well. So there's kind of two different reasons for the fight, I guess, which was quite interesting because it did delve into Amos's kind of like head and where he's at in his head, like when he's got that huge violence in, and maybe that's the only way he can actually process emotion is to get into like a physical fight. And I wasn't sure if it was also to do the fact that maybe they squared off to each other because actually it was almost safer for Amos to do it with Bobby rather than going around and just like beating up someone and potentially getting into a huge thing on the station somewhere. Whereas Bobby was like not a safe space, because obviously they still really got into it, but in the end it was unlikely they were going to actually kill each other, sort of thing.
I thought it was interesting that Amos actually accepts by the end of the book that he'd be all right with everybody except for Bobby. Bobby can take him out. It's like the first time throughout the entire sequence that he kind of feels physically inferior to somebody, or that he's in trouble. And then there's like a begrudging respect that comes. But again, when you live with somebody for 30 years, it's almost like a marriage of them all living together in the one place. Like, they should all be having heartburn at the same time. They should all be having indigestion at the same time. Like, the fact that they've never had a conversation just...
In a small ship, too.
In a small ship, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. But made for interesting power dynamics, for sure.
Aaron comments, would it make sense about the drugs? Amos did struggle a bit with his fight with Bobby, at least.
Yeah, he did.
It was interesting so many angles. Singh regretted not treating the prisoners, as I recall. The justification of Singh's execution to not make the insurgents martyrs.
Yeah, like that bit, actually, that his downfall, which I think they telegraphed from the very start of the book with how he came into power, the same thing was going to happen to him, and that he was going to do something that was inexcusable, but that actually, again, was that reasonableness of the Laconians, wasn't it? That actually, despite all the battles, despite all the loss of life, all of the people of the world are Laconians, and he was basically going to sentence them to death without thing, and that he had to be martyred for it in some way. I was like, this, like, I think that's one of the big things of the book as well. It plays with the reader insofar as you're supposed to dislike the Laconians, in principle of a reader of science fiction, space opera, or otherwise, to say there's got to be good guys and bad guys. But actually, are they really bad guys?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I was thinking too. Maybe it helped that Holden and Naomi were separated for a chunk. And Chris is now captain.
Choo choo! All aboard.
Naomi and Holden ship is Steve on board. I was on board when they were ready to retire. Right off into sit on the porch and reminisce. They actually weren't too bad in this one. I'll give them that. But they were apart for a good chunk of the book. Yes, I could believe it of Amos and Bobby that this is how they worked through some of their stuff. And what did people feel about Singh? We get a lot of his story in the book.
About Singh, I wondered, I'm still not clear on why he was selected, because his downfall was almost obvious, because he was green, he was a rule follower, and that was like the most major Laconian action that had ever taken place, and they gave it to an unseasoned person, to handle. So I'm just wondering what Duarte's thought process was with that, or what we're supposed to think about that. What do you all think?
I didn't like him, but it was really quite nice to see his background, and obviously you feel for him because he's got this whole wife and monster situation, so it makes him more human. But I almost feel like I know there was a bit about the fact they were trying to knock off his corners and things, but you almost feel like he was set up, because as Chris is saying, kind of like, you knew he was very green, you knew that they had that whole back and forth about why he had been there, but I think he would have planned that actually Duarte knows what the kind of belter idiom is, how they fight, what would happen. So maybe he just assumed that it would all go terribly wrong, and then this would be a way of just grabbing some sort of favor with the people. Like, yes, this person did a terrible thing, but actually we can be much better, and then that gives him a way in to gratiate. I don't know. It did feel like a setup, kind of, from reading it.
Point.
There's a couple of bits like it shows Duarte's hubris, if you want, insofar as that it doesn't matter about the individuals. But I also think it was a play on the fact that, regardless of political ideologies, good leadership is actually what wins out in the end. If you have poor political leadership or poor political ideas, it can be overcome with good leadership, and vice versa. You can have, so the representation of those ideas is often more important than actually what happens in the actions in some ways. So.
But how did Holden survive this long? If it's about leadership. Sorry, I couldn't help but take a shot at Holden. It's a long time, 30 years old.
But nothing's happened in 30 years either. Nothing. Like
nothing at all.
They're in the same ship. There's nobody been added in 30 years. There's nobody been taken away. There's nothing happened to anybody. It's just 30 years. Sorry, Alex got married and then divorced again. That's what's happened in 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
And Clarissa I thought Clarissa was like on the verge of death.
Yep.
And now she's like 30 years later. She's like, I'm still around. Like,
yeah.
You're still around?
But on the verge of death.
Yeah, she was just waiting on her new book, it turns out, versus ready to advance her story.
So good.
I wonder what will happen with Amos, because Holden is Amos's moral center, really. He's his compass, his moral compass. So Bobby's, but then Bobby, at the end, it seems like Bobby's going to be captaining in a different way where she's more in tune. So maybe that will take some of the edge off of Amos too, But another question I had, Amos and Clarissa apparently have had a platonic relationship all along. You don't think so, Chris?
No, I believe that that's the case, but I also believe that can't be true.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean that's my thought process. What is the purpose of that in the story?
Yeah, from a narrative point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe even just in terms, maybe it's just to show Amos is that locked in, to himself.
I did struggle with his reasoning for why he was on edge, and the fact that he wanted the Rocinante to be a tomb or whatever it was that he was basically saying, because I suspect that many of us thought it was because he'd lost his moral center. That was the thing that the book's been setting up for a long time, and with Holden not there, Amos loses a bit of his identity. I think that's what I was expecting him to say, or maybe he just wasn't aware of what was going on with himself or something. But what it actually turned into the explanation, I was like, that again, this seems a bit inconsistent with the character that we've got. And again, the other one was Clarissa saying to Bobby, "I'm really gonna miss Holden." What? Like, I know he's been missing for 30 years, but there's nobody else seems to have moved on character-wise, apart from Chris is now really, really likes James Holden, even though she wanted to murder him. Book 3 or whatever it was, I don't know.
I don't know. I think the Amos Clarissa thing, after not liking her at all previously, I quite liked her in this book, because I think there did seem to have been some sort of growth and how she was thinking about stuff. But I felt like I don't know if it was from listening to the Tying Guy podcasty thing, where they were talking about, obviously in the TV series, not the books, about the relationship between Amos and Clarissa. And it was never meant to be a sexual thing, because if you remember, Amos uses sex as like, it isn't caught up in the love and emotional side of stuff. It's very much just something he has to do, or something that he gets done for fun. So I feel like that relationship is actually quite justified, and I think they were both saying that he felt that they were both going through redemption arcs, and that was one of the reasons that he'd linked with her anyway. So I don't really mind or I quite like the Clarissa and him, that platonic relationship, and I kind of understand that sort of thing. But yeah, the Clarissa and Holden thing, it's been 30 years, but yeah, he just wants to murder him. So
I think it was more the words of, "I'm really gonna miss him." It's like something you say about a puppy that's just died, although maybe that does fit.
And no, definitely. But also with the whole Amos losing saying about how that he hadn't wanted to want something, that's actually a callback to something that happened in the further books, or one of the short stories at least, where they were talking about him just he always makes sure he doesn't want something. So I think it was meant to be a callback to something or a setup or whatever. So yes, but yeah, still a bit weird.
I kind of like that it was platonic, that it didn't become any, but 30 years with someone, I don't know. I think eventually,
Yeah.
I don't know, but it makes sense because Robin, like you said, Amos it's not an emotional thing for him. It's just like something he has to, almost like he has to, it's something he has to do to not let everyone know like what's going on in his own head. Like he has to like go through the motions. It's not something he enjoys really. So it makes sense, but at the same time, it's like that's a long time to be in a ship with someone.
Yeah, but you've also got to remember he has like he was an emotionally damaged child prostitute, so sex is an entirely different thing to him. It may not be like it may be not be wrapped up in that whole kind of love, like a safe space, like in his head. I would well, I don't know, maybe I'm not a psychologist, but but like that's where I took it. I was like, it shows more that they haven't, because that's his like special non thing sort of thing. But
It's almost like being platonic with her is more meaningful than it would be to him than a sexual relationship.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, men and women can totally be friends and not have sex. Just saying.
I mean, but 30 years? I don't know. That's a lot.
In the same enclosed space, like I agree with you, yes. But if I live with somebody for 30 years, the chances are, especially with a secret bottle of brandy stashed away at all places, I don't know. Maybe Amos is a better person than I am.
Maybe he's just a little crazy too.
Maybe a little crazy, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. He risked his life to get her off of Earth and all of that. So, yeah.
It's sort of like Amos is the best yet the worst of us. You know, he is that character, if you know what I mean. He's definitely somewhere in the middle. You know, he's somebody that we admire, but we're also afraid of, in equal measure.
Yeah.
You want him on your team. If he's on your team, you love him. If he's not on your team, you're scared to death of him.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, another question I have, or just thought process, is Drummer. And so, I first knew Drummer, the television character. So this was really odd to me to see this side of Drummer, I guess, who was questioning herself and pining for her love that was on the station. And but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading it, and I did like that she recognized that what was happening to her was what she had done, to, I forget which system it was. I think Chris, you already mentioned it.
Freehold.
Yeah. So, but what do you all think? Book or show?
Show.
Show,
So
definitely.
I think show for me. I mean,
I found it very hard to recognize this drummer. I kept on having problems disconnecting the show and because to me, the book character that most resembles Drummer is Pa, right, from the last book. That was very much who the TV show character of Drummer is. And this one seemed, like you said, it's a bit indecisive, bit unsure of herself, and, very much tied to a singular person rather than the Belt family, which is kind of who Drummer was in the TV show. The biggest problem I had with the Drummer character is that somehow the president and the leader of Mars and Earth were totally irrelevant. Like, the politics of this just made no sense. That the person who was saying at the start they weren't judge and jury, they couldn't be involved in the political thing, was all of a sudden making all of the decisions for the I know it's convenience of point of view story and all of that kind of stuff. It was one of those things you'd have to suspend your disbelief and go, right, we're surrendering as an entire system because Kamina Drummer says we're surrendering as an entire system, even though she's just kind of head of a transport union, which is kind of just this place and an institution rather than a fleet of ships or something. I don't know. I found that very difficult as well.
And meanwhile, Aversarala is actually the one giving her a spine. And,
Yeah, so some of their head-to-heads were quite interesting insofar as, Avasarala hasn't changed. And the moments where they connect are in their kind of offhandedness or their kind of, deprecating humor, where he says, like, Kurt, why would I, Kurt? I'd be dead, and that kind of stuff where they share those kind of moments.
Yeah, what was there? Someone was about to mention. I know I lost it.
I think we're getting an echo. Anyone else?
No.
No? Okay.
It's cool.
Aaron mentions 100% drummer is meh in this book, and wow in the show because they mixed her and Pa, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Chris remains the MVP.
She didn't get called Chrissy once in the entire book, though. I think that's maybe why it was minus a star for me. You know, no Amos Avasarala chat or banter between the two of them. Definitely lacking in this book for sure.
What did everyone think about Clarissa's final scene?
I loved it. I thought it was really good. I thought it was I guess because they've been setting up obviously her passing the whole way through, and also setting up how she was more than she seemed. In several places they'd mentioned, like, don't forget she could beat them up if she wanted to, and it was obviously I think we all kind of understood when he started that if she did that would be it because she was so frail. But I thought it was a nice way. I thought it wrapped up quite nicely. I thought it was a good way for her to have her out in the story, sort of thing, and also full circle saving people that she wanted to kill originally. So I liked it. I thought it was quite a nice end, all told, really.
I thought it was fitting. I did enjoy, I liked that she went out that way. At the end, I should have looked up the reference, but she saw Ren,
Yes,
the person that she killed at the end, and that inferred, I think, that a reconnection, if not a forgiveness. And I'm not quite sure if I'm, well, it's fine. It's fine. It's poignant. It is that she saw him again. She saw him first, So, but I had mixed feelings on that too.
There was a lovely moment where she does some self-reflection. She's also talking about I can't be a monster because monsters aren't afraid, that kind of thing that was in there, but also about the feeling to have killed somebody who was nothing but nice to you. I thought that was a really interesting reflection that you had, and like it was very telegraphed what her end was going to be. Especially when Singh said, "Oh, that'll be no problem. There's 5 Marines waiting for them by the time they get there." As soon as the door opens, and you went, "Well, what's going to happen now?" But somehow they managed to make it feel fitting and actually good use of that character. And again, I'm in charge of Captain Holden, as the hero of this story, and now Robin's cheering on for Clarissa. This is all went full circle.
It's all topsy-turvy. So good. You did notice, sorry, I forgot. Did you have want to say about that, Clarissa, before I moved on?
No.
I was going to say, I think in this book there was an awful lot of a lot of callbacks. Like throughout, they were talking about how it weighed heavy on her, almost as heavy as a work box full of bones. And then there were several other places where they were harking back to things and other characters that had happened previously in just one-off lines, which seemed to be a kind of a theme in this book, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, I do.
Nobody else noticed that?
I really like the character work that comes from the authors. Like, I don't think the prose is in any way beautiful to read or anything. It's very functional, and I think that the writing of the story kind of is very much that. But the character work, the small bits of character work in the books, I think are excellent. Those small callbacks, those small little details of reflection and thoughts they have, and that comes from writing these kind of single POVs the whole way through. It gives you some opportunity to really get some interesting self-reflection and thoughts in there. So, I think while the prose isn't amazing, I think the character writing is absolutely stellar in this. Again, terrible pun for a space opera, but yeah.
So
I do like. I'm sorry, Layla. Go ahead.
No, I just, we haven't talked about Alex enough. Now, do we foresee Alex flying one of those, monster protomolecule ships? Is that where we think we're headed? Or if you know, then yeah, don't tell me. But I'm always
Don't
asking
know.
for spoilers, and then I'm like, don't tell me the spoiler. But that I love Alex as a character, and I liked how it was talking about Bobby was his best person, and in his wedding and so on. But I almost felt like they didn't have anything else to do with Alex during that 30 years. Like he is the pilot, and that's all he can be. You know?
Again, he was waiting for another book.
Uh,
Did it have anything to do with him for 30 years? Like, just
Yeah.
sit on the shelf for 30 years. See you in 30.
Get married, have another kid, but do that by yourself. We'll use you in 30 years' time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he was one of the older people anyway, wasn't he?
No, so he's like 80.
He's really old now.
I thought that. Yeah, but also apparently he doesn't like life off the ship, but apparently curried goat and beer makes him a land person. Loves it at the end. Absolutely, it could live on the land, no problem, as long as he gets curried goat and beer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know for sure whether he will know how to fly the alien ship yet, but I would assume that's where we're going. I would assume that's.
I think he's almost certainly going down with the Rocinante. So either the Rocinante's careening straight into something, or he's gone down with the ship. I'll be stunned if that's not the outcome of Alex's story in some way.
Yeah, I'm with Chris on this one. I don't think he's going to be piloting the other one. I think, and again, the way they set up Holden and Bobby, the only way you could resolve that was by having two separate ships. So I very much think Christmas. I think the Rocinante is going to be like off somewhere.
Ooh,
Wow.
that would be fitting too. I wouldn't necessarily see that as a bad thing.
Yeah, that's good observation, Robin. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that was correct.
Well, they made it such a big deal, and now there's all this thing where they won't be able to retire. I guess I know Holden's not there anymore, but presumably they'll go rescue him. I'm not sure, but yeah, there's no way you could resolve that big of a conflict between her not being a captain. I think as soon as they were like, "We're going to board that ship," I was like, "They're stealing that." So.
But how interesting would it be if Holden now became like Darth Vader?
Oh, that would be great.
Man.
Wouldn't it? Him and Duarte come back in the scene and he's like in the black costume. Like, that would just be amazing.
I would love Holden if that happens.
Wouldn't that be amazing? I think that would be such a good, he sort of buys into Duarte's ideology a bit, but to a point, but also at the end, like, reveals that he never bought into it and he was actually only playing along with it, because Duarte sort of sets that up, doesn't he? Insofar as this could be a very strong ally for me. This could be somebody that could really sell my ideology or something.
Wow.
I guess if he sells it in like that would be the only way to save humanity. Because otherwise we're all going down the drain because of this bullet. Then I think Holden would be on board with that, with at least half enough to help out, sort of thing. So yeah, I can see that happening.
Not have a Holden POV for a book and a half from now on, so that we never actually get inside his brain. That would be so good.
Yeah.
I fear that's not going to happen, but that's just anyway. There's my fan fiction idea. Yeah.
Is the next book the last one?
No, there's two.
Two. Okay.
The Tiamat's Wrath's next, and then the Bath and Falls, which isn't out in paperback, I don't think, until April, I think, anyway. Something like that, anyway. Something like that. Or maybe it's out in paperback and it's the short story collection's out in April. One of them is getting released around that time, anyway.
Yeah. So what we know now is Duarte also has been playing with, what is it? Changing humans with the protomolecule, so including himself. I thought that was kind of cool. I can see how it's going to be. It could be a nightmare too.
Well, I think it's really interesting when you combine it with the fact that they're all like old. He is technically older. Do you know what I mean? He's going forever or for invincibility or everlasting life or whatever way you want to do it, and they're probably, if not already, they're going to be facing their mortality. And the fact that if there is the possibility for them to live forever, is that enough of an incentive for him or for humanity to actually again buy into his idea and his ideology? I think those are all really interesting ideas that they've kind of set up in this book for the future ones coming.
Oh, I like that.
I think if the time jump would have been like 5 to 10 years, it would have been a whole different experience. I think just even 5 years would have been enough, because you figure the proto-molecule from the minute from Leviathan Falls until now, how many years have passed, or until the last book, and you figure 30 years later it'd be more advanced than it is. If something else would have, I don't know, I think it would have moved a little quicker. So I think the 30 years is what I'm trying to get past that. But I think it would have been a lot different if it was a shorter time jump.
Yeah. I definitely think they could have written it in a way that in Laconia, time passed quicker. In just that one part of the Earth through the gate, then 30, 50 years could have passed there, so it would explain the kind of change in technology and the building the ships, whereas only 5 years or 3 years passed in reality for people at home that just got over the thing. I mean, maybe they didn't like the science of that as much, but it still would have think about better than this, I think.
I was going to say that would be hard to science away, though.
Yeah.
How especially because it's all on the same galaxy.
Space-time. Yeah.
I guess maybe you could do, if they found out a station, maybe then the internal of the station moved at a different time. But yeah, that would be hard to science away, I think. Be an interesting idea for sure.
Yeah.
Good.
If they had a station that weighed a lot, that was heavy, because time moves slower for heavier objects.
That's right. Yeah.
So if they had a heavy object, it would move slower, and they could have used that in a way, or kind of explain that away. But I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, the upshot was that we kind of ended up just suspending our disbelief anyway with most of the science, and because the time jump didn't really make sense. So you could have went around it a few ways.
Yeah. No, agree.
Yeah.
I think my confusion about duality was I was like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm, well, hopefully, touch wood, not yet facing my mortality, but I was like, would he take an experimental drug that essentially nobody knows what it does without testing if he wants to be the emperor that lives forever? To me, that doesn't make logical sense, because it's all new and untested and everything else like that. I just think it's a massive risk, especially if you've seen what the proto-molecule has done before to the children and the other technology they've tried to do, and it still makes the vomiting monsters. And I'm like, to me that seems risk benefit analysis not great. But as I said, if he's already dying, then there's a whole nother side to that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really interesting kind of exploration though of the kind of the psyche of an egomaniac, essentially, as Duarte has become. You know what I mean? It's very much all about what he is going to do and how he is seen. High Consul, even his name, isn't even kind of president or anything like that. It's something that kind of elevates beyond political means or otherwise. But yeah.
So did anyone look up the meaning of the title? Because I forgot to do it, and just now I tried to do a little sneaky look, and found that Persepolis was a famous wealthy city. So if it's called Persepolis Rising, I'm thinking Laconia is the Persepolis in the story, but I have to look into more of that. But I just wonder if anyone else had looked into that either. I usually do. Yeah, go ahead.
According to Wikipedia, Persepolis is derived from the Greek Persepolis, or I'm probably butchering that, a compound of two different words that I can't pronounce right now, together meaning the Persian city, or the city of the Persians. To ancient Persians, the city was known as Parsa, which is also the word for the region of Persia.
Yeah, I think it very much is an illustration using kind of like a lot of the book titles have done, kind of either mythological or Greek or Roman kind of places names to kind of say the birth of a new civilization, the rise of a new civilization. A bit like, I suppose, the Persian Empire, as I was saying.
Aaron mentions conquered by Alexander the Great, I believe.
I was going to say, if only we had a history teacher. If only.
If only we had a history teacher in the room. I don't know. And Legends of the Brave Bard just dropping by to like the video. I haven't read this far in the Expanse yet. Mad love, y'all. Thanks for dropping by. Hopefully we didn't spoil anything for you.
Yeah. It does bring that interesting point that you made up in your weekly wrap-up, though, Steve. If I didn't enjoy all of your company so much, I may not have finished this book.
Bum, bum, bum.
I'm glad I did. I'm very much glad I did, but there was a point about halfway through where the inconsistency of some of the decision making narratively and science wise was driving me insane. And I'm glad it did push through because I did enjoy the story in the end, very much so. And the work sets up and the possibilities with it, but it was a challenge at times.
Oh, I think you muted, Robin.
Muted.
Aha. I know I said that I said it at the beginning because I'm such a huge fan of the site, but fan of the series. Like, I only finished the book today because it didn't catch me as much as the other ones at all. So I was really kind of like, I don't know if I would DNF'd it, but it was definitely much more of a slog than the other ones for sure. On my viewpoint on it, but I don't know. Hopefully the next one will be back. I don't know. It's still the same time jump. So.
Yeah. We're committed. We're in this far. Yeah, that's the bit that I'm kind of like, right, okay, they're gonna have to do something with this time jump.
I mean, we're committed, and I'll be reading it anyway. But I will say, as much as I feel like this, I agree, Robin, was a slog. I am excited to see what happens next. I think the way that it ended, I am excited to see where they go with it. So while it wasn't my favorite, probably my least favorite, but I am still hopeful that they'll do something neat with it.
It's quite interesting if you think about it, that the two ones that have been least favorite, at least in this group, is the one where we found the bullet the first time. So yeah, that was quite interesting because that was where they went on the planet and they found the bullet.
Yeah.
Originally, and then this one.
That's true. Spoiler burn, wasn't it? Book 4. Yeah. And that is interesting. But I was reading this and thinking, did I remember that correctly or understand that correctly from book 4? Because it was explained very well in this book, actually, what happened there with Every. But did I remember that happening? Other than there was a lot of timey-wimey weirdness stuff going on around the time when they went to the structures, in and around, and time was slowing and getting faster and stuff. But actually, I liked that it was revisited here because it very much brought it back into focus of exactly these two things were linked and it was happening again. And this is a warning of some sort, it would appear.
Oh, yeah. We hadn't mentioned that. And that, I thought that was a cool part too. And so looking forward to seeing what happens there.
Yeah. Especially because nobody was sure who was doing it. The Laconians thought it maybe the Earth and Mars were doing it, and then Earth and Mars were like, oh no, the Laconians are doing it. Nobody was sure. And even in the big battle that came after that, they were very much, let's just not use it. People were being careful with it, because, they weren't sure what was happening.
I thought the Laconians were very chill about something just turning up on their ship, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We took pictures of it. Get your cell phone out. Get the...
This is here now. We'll just put a curtain around it. That'll happen. We'll just carry on. It'll be all good.
We'll try putting sticks in it and it just passed through, but it's fine. Just, yeah.
I hate to compare this to Game of Thrones, but I kind of get the feeling that the proto-molecule is going to be the White Walkers. Kind of like they're always there in the background, but they're going to end up being the big bad. Anyone else have that kind of impression that they will be the major problem at the end that we have to deal with, and we've all kind of been ignoring it, or not ignoring it, but they've been fighting amongst themselves about other things, and then at the end they'll have to deal with that. That'll be the major conflict.
did strike me, especially it kind of struck me that the ships were the dragons in Game of Thrones. If anybody hasn't read of all Game of Thrones, but when one of the dragons turns, you know, it was very much like that idea again that we've got here with the Gathering Storm, or if they could defeat or take down one of the big dragons, because that's essentially what these big behemoth ships are. You know, these undefeatable war machines, that it can turn the tide of war. So it did strike me around that time. It did.
Yeah, but I think that is probably the direction they're headed, because they're right now they're competing with each other, just for you know, who can gain the most power with it. But it looks like it probably will turn on them, both physically with Duarte, and then maybe the ship itself somehow. So
Yeah. It's going to be interesting for sure.
yeah.
But for all that was said about it not being my favorite book, this has been my favorite discussion of them all. By far, this has been.
I was thinking in the back of my mind after saying all that, you know, I was happy I read it, and I've had a great time enjoying talking about it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Something
Makes it all
on that
worth it.
for sure. It does.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you guys had on your notes that you wanted to mention?
I think my last one was, did you guys see the Kickstarter?
No. Oh, I did. Yes, for the remainder of the adaptation.
Yeah. So
Making records.
apparently it'll fill in the 30-year gap. It would like talk about their different things. I just thought it was funny when we were talking about nothing seemed to have happened in those 30 years, but obviously they're going to try and fill it in with this graphic novel Kickstarter, which is interesting. I would have joined, but I think the shipping was like £70 per shipment. Wow. I was like, that's too much. And the graphic novels weren't even that much money, so I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, just to say that that's out there if you were interested in what they're kind of trying to do with the 30-year gap. But it is based on the TV series, not the book, so Alex isn't involved in them. So maybe he did nothing.
Well, that's kind of disappointing that it's connected to the TV, because the TV series we may never see after the 30 years.
Yeah.
Be adapted. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I was a little bit miffed, but again, I think it's not directly written by the two authors. I think they have guided, but they're not writing directly. So I think it's a different person as well. I think it's easier to do that for graphic novel because it's more visual. So, but yeah, I just wanted to say that.
It is interesting how this book sits in my head alongside, you know, great book series that I've read, and then how the TV sits around great TV series that I've read, because I can say now, especially now we've got to the point where I'm glad they stopped, because you know, it could have been, the TV series sits a lot higher in my head than the book series does in general, and I've really enjoyed the book series, like for sure, but I love the TV series way more than I like it's funny, the TV series is much more science fiction than I think than the books are in a lot of ways, and I think that's where the disconnect comes from me a little bit, is that these feel like very character-based stories set in a science fiction world, rather than the TV series being a very science fiction world with great characters. You know, I think it's kind of the other way around, just a little bit in my head, and that's like the word sets. And we get such few good sci-fi shows that this kind of elevates above everything else.
I agree.
And Jacob is excited to start the Expanse this year. I hope I didn't spoil anything for you, Jacob. Apologies if we did.
But not that happened for 30 years. That's what your takeaway is.
Yes. Nothing to see here for 30 years. Well, cool. Yeah, excited to see where we go next. And it's always a pleasure. It's been great to see all of you again. It's been a little bit since we talked about the series. So happy to be back talking about it. It's even though like we all said, it wasn't our favorite, but it was still fun to chat about. So it's all
amazingly fun.
So before we sign off, Layla, can you let people know where to find you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter or under El Goshi or Ballady Magazine, and I've lost my voice.
Right in time.
Right on time.
And Chris?
You can find me on my YouTube channel if I decide to put anything out, or you can find me on Twitter at 7 o'clock shadow.
Nice. And Robin?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Bookends and Biscuits, or on Twitter. I think it's Bookends Biscuits with no and. But yeah, both those places.
Awesome. It's always a pleasure to see all of you and everyone in the chat. It's good. Thanks for coming by and hanging out. Hopefully, Jacob, we didn't spoil the series for you. Aaron's the highlight is discussion is always the highlight of reading. Thanks, Aaron, for coming by, and we'll see everyone next time. Have a good day.
Yeah, bye.